So our prediction is that we've seen revenue on Ethereum or fees generated on Ethereum hit some pretty local lows, some low levels we haven't seen in a while. And I guess even before I get into that point, I just want to bring up that although Ethereum has lagged in price, as of recent, it's actually climbing. And right now we just broke the critical 3,000, $3,800 level. We broke that a couple of minutes ago. So even though it's been lagging, we've seen Ethereum really catch up since the election. And who knows, maybe it may not be our problem child going forward. And that kind of ties into our prediction too. Going into that, we've seen these layer one networks, these alt L1 networks like Solana, Sui, Aptos, and so on, still one TV as well as users from Ethereum mainnet. So that's one reason why we've seen fees in Ethereum drop, which we can see here since the beginning of this year, which co-aligns with Solana gaining huge major traction, and then as well as alt layer ones like Sui, as I mentioned, gaining huge major traction. We see a drop in Ethereum's revenue more fees. And then on top of that, there's a second issue, which is the Ethereum Foundation chose to scale Ethereum through a layer two scaling solution. And Kareem spoke about layer twos earlier and what they are. So because of this, a lot of users have moved from Ethereum mainnet, which is the Ethereum, the layer one, to these layer two networks that are built on top of Ethereum. And because of that, Ethereum isn't generating as many fees. And this really became a problem in the beginning of this year when Ethereum went through something called EIP 4844, which essentially is an upgrade to the network, which makes it cheaper to transact on these layer two networks through the introduction of something called blob space, which is basically just like a temporary status solution. And because of that, more people are transacting on these layer two networks now that they're cheap, comparable to prices on alt layer ones like Solana and Sui and so on. And the way it works is that these layer two networks, they pay a fee back to Ethereum, but the fee isn't so high. And because of that, since people are using that instead of the layer one, the fees have dropped down on layer one significantly. And it may not seem like the future is looking bright for Ethereum, but that's not the case. Because although these layer ones, these alt layer twos are stealing fees and uses from Ethereum's mainnet, they're actually contributing to the entirety of the Ethereum like ecosystem. And they're doing that by bringing more and more users onto Ethereum. And we're seeing that, right? We see layer twos like Optimism, Arbitrum, and Coinbase's layer two network base bring a ton of users. This year alone, Coinbase's layer two network has generated about $90 million in revenue and has a TVL of about 4 billion, which is huge. That makes it like the sixth or fifth largest network in terms of TVL. So this is driving in more and more users who would not be using Ethereum. They may be using networks like Solana or Sui, but now it's driving them back to the Ethereum network. And then on top of that, if we do want to onboard the next 100 million people onto crypto, which I'm sure we are going to do, we need these cheap and easy to use layer two networks and such. And so Coinbase's base has done a very good job of that. As we onboard more and more users, the fees paid back to Ethereum will get higher and higher. And then on top of that, there's this thing I mentioned, blob space. There are some critical levels of demand in blob space. And that's one thing that we touch on in State of Crypto is that we wrote this again in September. We made a prediction that we would reach those critical levels, and we are now actually reaching those critical levels. And since we've reached those levels, we've seen the price of Ethereum actually spike corresponding to the time of us reaching those critical levels. So you can read more on that on our State of Crypto, but that's another prediction that we made that has actually came true before we released the report, unfortunately. But it just shows that these layer twos are doing what they are doing. They're driving a lot of users on these layer twos, which is driving fees paid back to layer one. And as blob space demand reaches above 100%, the fees generated by layer one are going to be even higher and higher. So we are seeing that. And then on top of that, you have a lot of alt layer ones that are now becoming layer two networks on Ethereum. We're seeing this with Celo and Sonic or Fulminarna. So that's another thing that's going to drive more users. And then we're seeing some TradFi companies or some Web2 companies like Sony release their own layer two network. So Sony announced in August their Sonium layer two network. And that's also just going to drive more users to Ethereum layer twos, which in turn would drive more revenue to Ethereum in general. And so we might see different companies like Robinhood and Visa also adopt these layer two networks. And again, just driving more and more users onto Ethereum. As that happens, the fees are just going to go up and up. And we predict that we're going to return to levels that we had previously seen in 2020, 2021.